beyond coincidence, the most supernatural thing that's ever happened to me. I wasn't sure how to do this video. I went back and forth on it for months, deciding if I should even do it or not. And I eventually decided that I would do this video and upload it on Halloween as sort of a tribute to my last remaining uncle who died earlier this year, and Halloween just so happens to be his birthday. Not to get into specifics, but he passed away back in April, and it was sort of a shock to everyone with how sudden it was, because even I had just talked to him on Facebook Messenger just shortly beforehand. So I was informed of his passing just a couple hours before I had to go into work. At work that day, I was still kind of processing his passing away, and on one of the computer desks at work was a penny that was face down. To put this into some sort of perspective, I work at a very large warehouse, and there are probably over 1,000 different computer desks campus-wide, and I just so happened to be stationed in an area where I saw what appeared to be a strategically placed penny on one of the desks. Now, seeing a penny on a desk isn't like the most uncommon thing ever, but it's also not like overly common to see loose change on these desks, because it's a warehouse. There's a lot of work stuff. There's not just money laying around. So I see this penny sitting there face down, and I say to myself, if this is a 1984 penny, it was put here for me. To explain that a little more, for as long as I can remember, I've always picked up coins off the ground. The whole heads up is good luck and face down is bad luck never mattered to me. Money is money. So picking up a penny always makes me a penny richer. But mostly, it's just because I still prefer using physical money over cards, and I always like having change in my pocket so I can pay with exact change as much as possible. It's kind of like an OCD thing. For instance, if I see something that I want that costs $20 plus tax, and I don't have the amount in tax without having to use two $20 bills, I just won't buy the item because I don't want to spend two 20s. So anyways, I've always picked up coins because you are always going to need them at some point in time to help pay taxes on something. So another thing that I like to do, and I've also done this for as long as I can remember also, is that I like to look at the dates on the coins that I pick up. Again, this is probably another OCD thing, but I like to look at the year. There are certain years like 1996 and 1991 that were really cool years when a lot of cool music and movies came out. So when I get a coin with one of those dates on it, I consider it a good luck coin. Well, the main year I always look for is 1984. The reason being that 1984 was the year I was born, and is also the year that Terminator and Ghostbusters came out, so it was a cool year. So every time I find a coin on the ground, I always look at the date, and if it's 1984, I always say to myself, this was meant for me. However, coming across 1984 or coins randomly in the wild is actually pretty rare. Of all the coins I've ever picked up in my 30 plus years of picking up coins off the ground, maybe only a dozen, maybe 20 at most were actually 1984. So finding them is not easy. It's like maybe 2 or 3 times a year at the very most you might come across one. So it's not very common, whereas finding dates from more recent years is very common. You can find almost every one you pick up is going to be within the last 5 years. But the coins with the recent dates don't interest me as much as the ones with the older dates. This is because I think about like the 1984 coins, and it's interesting to think about where those have been, and they have been in circulation for the same amount of time that I've been alive. And I like to think to myself about where all those coins have ended up, like what places they've been, and has there ever been a point in time where that same particular coin was actually in my possession years ago and I used it to pay for something, or even if that coin ended up in a famous person's hands and they used it to buy something. I don't know, I've just always thought it was interesting to look at old coins and think about the amount of people that possessed that particular coin at some point in their life. So anyways, back to my story. I'm at work. My uncle just passed away, and I come across this random penny in the center of a computer desk. Before I pick it up, I say, if this is a 1984 penny, this was totally intentional. And so I pick it up and I flip it over, and it's 1984. But wait, things get even crazier. So when I saw that the date on the random penny was 1984, it was a very surreal experience. I was like, this is not a coincidence. This is way too direct for it to be just a random incident. So, of course, I keep that penny. And when I get home, I put it on the shelf so I don't get it mixed up with my other change and I accidentally spend it. So the very next day, I'm doing laundry. And as I'm taking out the clothes out from the dryer, I see a penny sitting on the edge of the door. I've accidentally left change in my pant pockets and washed them before, so seeing a random penny in the dryer isn't totally uncommon. However, I'm always pretty good at emptying my pockets before I put my clothes in the washer, so it's not like a super common thing for me to have change flying around in the washer and dryer. But here's what makes this particular case even more interesting than normal, is that in all my times of doing laundry, there has never been a time where a coin has been found actually sitting on the opening panel edge of the door. They're usually back off in the middle or back off inside the washer or dryer somewhere. So here's this random penny sitting there like on the edge of the panel, like right as you open the door. And I look at it and I'm like, it's totally going to be weird if this is another 1984 penny. And so I pick it up and I look at it, and it looks newer. It doesn't look like an older penny. It looks like it's probably from like the late 90s or early 2000s. So I'm like, this is not 1984. And so I look at it closer and I'm like, what is that? Like the date, it looks like an 8 and then it's a 4 and then it is 1984. Like, I'm thinking to myself, there's no way, like what's going on here? I even go to the shelf where I put the first 1984 penny that I found just to make sure that I didn't accidentally put that in my pants and wash it. But no, it's still there. So I have two 1984 pennies that I have found within a 24-hour period. That's pretty crazy in itself. And I'm already convinced that this is not a coincidence. This is a direct message. But I still had one more load of laundry to do, and I put that in the dryer. Once that was complete, I took the clothes out of the dryer, and there was yet another penny resting on the same exact panel where the first penny was laying. Again, of all the times doing laundry, finding pennies on the inside of the panel like this has never happened, and now it's happened twice on the same day. And this penny looks older and is face down, and I go, there is no way this is 1984. I flip it around and it's not 1984. It's 1964. But that's interesting too, because 1964 happens to be the year that my mom was born. So I take these pennies and I put them on the shelf all together with the other 1984 penny that I found at work the previous day. And the following day, after the weekend, I go back to work and I park at the usual parking spot that I always park at. I get out of the car and I look down and there's a penny on the ground right in front of me. At this point, I'm like, I already know this is a 1984 penny. In fact, I'm going to be more shocked if this isn't a 1984 penny. And it's face down. So I reach down, pick it up, I flip it over, and indeed, it is 1984. I'm not making any of this up. This is 1000% true. So I found 3 1984 pennies in random places in a 3-day span right after my uncle passed away. Some might still consider all of that just an ironic coincidence, but I think it's way too direct to be a coincidence. And then the question remains, why would my uncle directly contact me specifically in that manner? Well, he was always kind of a jokester, and I think he knew that money would get my attention, and I also have to think that he knew that I would make a video about it, and this was like his way of waving goodbye to everybody. That's just what I think. What do you think? Was this a supernatural event, or was this all just a big coincidence?